We work hard as physicians to take care of the health and well-being of our patients. But when it comes to our money, do we have the same condition of care? Probably not. Let's change that together. Welcome to the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast, where we'll fight and advocate for your financial literacy. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. Thanks for being here. Let's jump into the show. This week's episode is sponsored by CityVest. CityVest has quickly become the most popular and best way for doctors to invest in top-performing real estate private equity funds that are usually reserved for institutional investors. This unique access to investing in these institutional funds is available for the first time ever through CityVest's easy and secure online investment platform. CityVest does the hard work of conducting due diligence and vetting the investments. They even get a third-party due diligence report that is posted on their website. As a result of aggregating a several $million investment amount into their access funds, CityVest gains access to investing in the institutional investment and is able to negotiate better investment terms such as a 12% preferred return. You can check them out at cityvest.com or go to the link in the show notes below. Welcome, everybody, to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast. And I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. And as you know, we talk about 4 different types of freedom: financial, time, location, and emotional freedom. And so what started out as physician guests in an audience has broadened and increased its scope of reach. And so now it's entrepreneurs, investors, business owners, people doing things on the cutting edge. So hopefully each party can benefit. So in that light, I have a very interesting guest today. Is Keith Willard. He's a podcast host, but he's also in the event space. So, events these days are really popular, conferences, conventions, meetings, and we're going to get a lot of information, and it's going to be a great conversation. So Keith, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I know we had connected on Podmatch, and it's really interesting because I'm always been fascinated with the event space just because of its scalability. And,
right.
You just need one venue and you can pack so many people in, and it's just and I love networking. So tell us more about who you are, your background, and we'll go from there.
Perfect. Well, as you said, I'm Keith Willard. I own a company called Keith Willard Events, which is my own company. And then I also have a podcast called Behind the Veil, which is everything all about weddings and events behind the scenes. And like your podcast, it has expanded into ways I could have never even imagined when we first started it 3 years ago. Before I had my company, I actually was the director of catering for Ritz-Carlton for many years. And then before that, I was actually the executive director of a not-for-profit. So my life has always been in events in one way or another.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think, I think it touches to the core value of just being a human, trying to connect with others and interact and network.
Yeah.
And
Well, but that's one thing about events is that, you typically people that do events for like life markers, right? Births, deaths, weddings, celebrations, new jobs, all of those typically happy moments. And so to be that person that is involved in usually happy moments is awesome, because I get to see a side of people and a time in people's lives that other people don't get to see. And it just brings a lot of joy constantly, a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. Let me just put that there. But it's amazing because I really get to see people in their best.
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll talk about, more of I know you do a lot of different types of events, but we'll start, one thing is, we talked about events and what makes a good guest or a host, and how do they make the event successful?
Well, I think one of the things that most people make a mistake on is that they get too caught up into the minor details. And I go through this process with my clients all the time. I'm like, The anticipated experience is a very different field for somebody that's throwing an event versus somebody that is coming to an event. And so if you're coming to an event, and let's say wedding, right? I'm going to a wedding. If I'm invited to a wedding, pretty much I think I'm going to get to see two people get married. I'm going to have a couple of drinks. I'm sure there'll be a cocktail hour and there'll be some dinner and some dancing, right? That's about the extent of my expected experience. But on the wedding side, on the bride side or the groom side or the couple side, they get very caught up in, oh my goodness, well, what if we don't have a favor? What if we don't have a candy table? And they get into these what if scenarios that circle and create a lot of stress and drama, when really they got to bring it back down to what is their guest's true anticipated experience, and bring them into your life, right? People want to feel connected to other people. And so if you can find ways to make it easy for your guests to laugh, talk to each other, and leave knowing a few more people, you're going to have a successful event.
Yeah, I like that. It's boils down to because they say, especially, special, it's like, everybody has this idea of perfection and it has to go a certain way. And if it doesn't meet that, it's like, but I like how you may boil it down to simple concepts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and think about the last event that you went to. I mean, what are the things that really truly annoyed you when you went to an event? And typically the things that annoy us as guests are long lines, because nobody wants to sit in a long line waiting for a cocktail or a drink, bad service, right? If somebody doesn't smile, and valet waiting for your car, right? Those tend to be the big three. And so if you can figure out a way to make sure that people have great service, have immediate access to food and beverage, and easy access to parking or valet, you're already on the positive side.
Yeah.
Doc to Doc is a personal lending solution designed by doctors for doctors. We understand that doctors' financial situations change faster than an insulin drip in ketoacidosis. And we also understand that doctors are the most reliable borrowers in the world. Through our proprietary algorithm, we're able to provide personal loans at great rates with amazing flexibility, because we take into account your schooling, your specialty, and where you are in the medical journey. Doctors come to us after they've matched into residency, and we loan for all sorts of personal reasons, from credit card debt consolidation to family expenses and medical bills. We speak with everyone who applies for a loan and offer fixed interest rates and flexible term options without prepayment penalties. If you're a physician looking for a personal loan, fill out our application form now. It only takes 3 minutes, and we'll get back to you with a decision within 24 hours.
I know, like booking, especially booking in-person events, especially venues and things like that. What red flags should everyone be aware of when, choosing a hotel, vendor, venue?
Don't overestimate your guest count. This happens a lot. So being from the hotel industry, I can tell you that, most of the time when you walk in and let's say that you're doing a networking event, a conference or convention, the hotel is going to ask you for minimums, right? Everything's based on a minimum. The hotel wants to know at least how much minimally are we going to make off of this event? And people tend to overestimate by at least 30%. Usually.
Oh, wow.
And so, but the problem is that once you contract that, you can't go below it. So let's say you have a networking event or conference. So you have a day conference, and you expect you think in your brain, oh, we're going to have at least 150 people, right? So that's what you contract for. But then you end at 100 people. You still have to spend at least the 150 person mark, because that's what you contracted. You can always go up, but you can't go down. So when going to book a hotel, be realistic about your numbers, drop it down by 20%, and then everybody will be happy, right? Because again, once you get closer to the actual date of the event, you can go up and the hotel's going to be thrilled. They're going to be like, oh, great, more money, more people, excellent. But they're not going to let you go down.
So always underestimate. And
a little bit. Yeah. Always underestimate a little bit. I mean, I think that we fall into this thing that we think that we're more important than we actually are. Or that more people are actually interested than they really are. And sometimes they are, but sometimes they're not. So I'd rather err on the side of caution and then be excited when things do go crazy and go huge. And then figure that out from that point.
Yeah. Have you come up with any new ideas or strategy or risk mitigation techniques now that COVID's in the picture? Now COVID's mainstream, so any sort of advice or strategies that you've used, especially when planning in-person events?
Oh my goodness. It's been all over the place in the last 3 years. I'm located in South Florida. So, thank you, Governor DeSantis, for not shutting anything down, because our businesses did great. Didn't do great for healthcare, let me just say, but did great for business. And so we've had to adjust everything that we've thought we were going to do constantly. So there's no real right answer for this. Many times it's about the comfort level of the client, right? So if I have a company that has a pretty strict mask policy, then I know that their event is going to have to also be fairly strict in their mask policy. And that means that I'm going to have a lot of extra sanitizer, a lot of extra space. I'm going to have to make sure that there's a lot of distance between people, as much as possible. If I have a company that they're very lackadaisical, or they say everybody's supposed to be triple vaccinated, etc., then we plan on those things being a little tighter. Now the interesting piece comes in here is that you're going to have a wide range of guests that are coming, and in order to make sure that everybody has a good time, you have to make sure that there is going to be space for everybody there to be comfortable. And so what I mean by this is that you're going to have tables of 10, but also tables of 6. So that way, if somebody is very cautious about their personal health, is wearing masks, doesn't want to sit at a crowded table, that there's going to be that option available for them.
Yeah, that's interesting. What about what about especially in people were planning things in January, February, March 2020, and then they had all these big events planned, and all of a sudden just whim, regulation to shut everything down. Do you have any risk mitigation for those types of things, where just everything says closed, you can't, all of that?
Oh, it was bad. Oh, it was bad. Yeah. So down here, March 13th was the big day, right? March 13th, everything came to a close down here. And it was really devastating for our event industry. And that's actually why I started the podcast, is because being in the wedding and event industry, there wasn't a lot of information coming, because people didn't know what to do. It's all of a sudden you couldn't get a hold of anybody at the hotel because they weren't there. And so you have these big contracts, and you're like, well, what's going to happen to that money? Or what's going to happen to my event? And so we started the podcast because we could pull on the directors of catering, we could put on the general managers, we could put on the vendors, and they could give us a little idea of how they were dealing with it internally. Mm-hmm. And it gave people some insight. But yeah, it was a very scary 6 to 9 months for us here in South Florida. It was very scary for, I guess, 1.5 to 2 years for the people in California, because of different rules and regulations. It was a really, really rough time. And we were basically moment by moment, figuring it out moment by moment. It was crazy. Yeah, I don't know if there's any way to mitigate that loss, because we had never had that situation happen before, ever, right?
Yeah.
When's the last time that everybody said, oh, yep, shut everything down for 6 months to a year?
Yeah, never. I don't think
so.
Yeah,
so it's hard to figure it out. Now, what we're doing is, a lot of people are putting into their clause a COVID clause, so to speak, saying that, people, if something like this happens again, you will be able to move your date once, 6 months out, 8 months out, but typically within the same calendar year, right? And so hotels, their budgets are based on a year. And so they really want you to spend that money in that year. So if you have an event in January or February, and let's say it's a $50,000 event, a contract that you signed for $50,000 with the hotel, and COVID happens again, that the hotel now has in place that, yes, we understand this is going to happen. We're going to allow you to move that, but you need to spend it within the same calendar year, hoping that everything is going to reopen.
Yeah. That's, yeah.
And that's, I mean, and I'm saying on average, I'm not saying every hotel, by the way, please don't think that it's every hotel, but that's what I've been seeing on average. Is hotels focusing on that, and vendors too, because, you know, small vendors like florists, let's talk about florists. You know, it was really hard for them because they signed all these contracts before COVID. Who knew that the price of flowers was going to double? So now they have these contracts for like 10,000 or so, and the cost of flowers is 12. So they're making zero money. They're actually paying to do your event. But they're trying to fulfill those contracts because obviously they want to keep their reputation and they want to keep the business this going. But a lot of the small florists, like, actually had to close their doors. It was bad.
Yeah, that's horrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
COVID has done, you know, we're just, you know, so much highlighted, so much, you know, inefficiency and just, you know, all of the just really destructive to society.
Do you know what else COVID did though? It also brought out the best in humans too. And it's one of those things, it's weird. I mean, you know, being on this side of it, the understanding that people had at the beginning, you know, the willingness to adjust, to let people out of their contracts, to give people money back. I'd never seen that before, ever, in hotels and events, ever. And so that was really, really surprising to see that. And it was actually nice to see that, you know, humanity actually went, we're going to try to take care of each other during this crazy time. Now that lasted about 6 months. People then got tired of, you know, being the super nice guy and giving all their money back. But, you know, but at the beginning, it was great, you know, to see how people reacted and how they rallied around each other to do everything they could to help their fellow man, because everybody was in the same boat.
Yeah. Now I know you focus a lot on weddings, and you know, that's really one of the highlights. And any takeaways or any analogies with, you know, for example, business conferences or other types of networking events, some analogies or parallels you can draw between those two?
I think that it's basically a human connection. You know, human beings like to be connected with one another, and yet we all have the same insecurities, right? And it's amazing how many times I see people that are very worried about how they look, how they appear, how they come across. And there's somebody for everyone out there. And I think that if you're true to yourself, you're going to find people that are similar to you, that you're going to really enjoy yourself. So don't try to be somebody else, be you, right?
Yeah.
And almost unapologetically be you. Don't apologize for, you know, how you act or who you are, because there's going to be somebody else just like you. And do you really want to be, you know, connected with people that aren't like you? Or would you rather, you know, cut out all that wasted time and get to the people that you really are connected with?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So well said.
I know it's part of just human nature, you know, that we constantly worry about how other people think about us.
Yeah.
It's like, well, at some point in your age, you know, I don't know what happens. You know, now that I'm in my 50s, I care less. and I think that I hope that continues, because, you know, it's a little freeing to be like, you know, I am who I am.
Yeah.
You know, take me as I am. If you don't want to take me as I am, there are 7 billion other people out there for you to go talk to.
Yeah. I think we're in our 20s and 30s and we're just so uptight and just, you know, care.
Yeah. So worried about how we carry ourselves in our presence. And I get it. You know, your people are learning to figure themselves out as well. A lot of times we don't even know who we are, you know, what are the things that make us tick. But it's nice that at some point that does start going away. And then you start thinking, yeah, you know what? I'm all right. I'm good.
Yeah.
You know, Why did I worry so much?
No, I know it's quite interesting because you've done events, and then really, I think one of your underlying values is happiness, and
Yeah.
we can, and then you incorporate that in terms of you started your podcast because of the pandemic and just to help others. Tell others, how did you come to this value and belief of happiness and contributing and serving?
I think it goes back to the fact that one of my very first jobs was being an executive director of a not-for-profit. It's already always been kind of in my ballot, in my tool shed, so to speak, that to help other people. I've always liked it. It's always brought a lot of joy to me, and has been always kind of a calling. Plus, the warmth and joy that you get from helping another person is something that you can't buy, right? You can go and get a brand new coat and you love your brand new coat, or you get the sick pair of shoes that you've been looking for forever and you love them and it's amazing, but it's not the same feeling that you get when somebody else says thank you. Right? When somebody genuinely comes to you and says, I cannot thank you enough for what you did for us. There's just something about that just fills you with warmth and pride and love and humanity in general. It just, and I think that knowing that I was in the event industry, seeing how many people were going through so many issues. I mean, and not just vendors, but couples, all of a sudden couples, who had been planning their weddings for years, all of a sudden couldn't get married. So what happens to them? And then vendors that all of a sudden they have no money. What do they do? And then hotels all of a sudden had to lay off people that they never thought they would have to lay off. Right.
Yeah.
And so the idea of the podcast actually came out from all of that pain, because I was really trying to figure out, how do we provide answers to people in a way that we can reach as many people as possible. And actually started as a Zoom call, right?
Yeah.
Much like this, started as a Zoom call, and we put it out onto Facebook Live, and it was like so the first one was on a Tuesday at 2:00. I don't know, it was random, totally Tuesday at 2:00, and we had a director of catering from Conrad Hotel, and we had a oh gosh, who was the person? I think it was another event planner. Another event planner. And we got together and we just started talking, and people were asking questions on Facebook, right? What about contracts? What about this? What about that? And so we were answering those questions as much as we could. And so after an hour, we were like, okay, guys, we're done, but we're going to be back next Tuesday and we'll have different people on. And so you can ask those questions. And so after the fourth Tuesday in a row, and it kept getting bigger. Like first we had like 50 people watching. The second one we had like 150 people watching. Then we had like 300 people watching. Then like 500 people watching. And my husband actually said, you're going to have to name it something, because you can't just keep calling it, our Zoom call on Tuesday. And so he actually came up with the name Behind the Veil, which I thought was pretty brilliant. And then we had to figure out how to widen our access to our audience, because we were just on Facebook at that point. And so I found a software company called StreamYard, which goes to LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube all at the same time. And then it also converts it to an MP3, which allows us to do the podcast. Wow. And so, fast forward 3 years, we went from, 50 people to 50,000. It's been a little crazy.
Nice.
And we still hold true to the original values that we're here to provide answers in a fun and entertaining way. And, that it's not a sales call. We don't talk about our personal businesses on there. So, you don't hear about Keith Willard events or my coworkers. You don't hear about, Marcy Gutenberg and Affair to Remember. You don't hear about those companies. We're only focused on the guest, right? And getting those answers.
Yeah. It's so amazing because you're all about community and then celebrating the important moments in people's lives, and then you've created a business out of it. And
what's interesting is you have if you show up and you have a, daily habit, your tribe and followers will come. So, it's been a great conversation.
And this is what makes the world go around. The conversations like this, having a conversation like this and learning about other people.
Yeah. I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's been fascinating, just talking how connection and community and how you can create a business out of it. I know clients or audience are listening, and they may want to reach out to you, visit you, maybe even work with you. So how can they do that?
Oh, easily. So basically all of my social media is at Keith Willard. So if you go to Facebook, it's at Keith Willard, Instagram at Keith Willard, TikTok, there's nothing on TikTok, so don't even try, but it's at Keith Willard. The only difference one is on LinkedIn, I think it's Keith Willard 1, which is weird. And then, or my website, which is www.keithwillardevents.com. Or if you want to check out our YouTube channel, it's Behind the Veil by Keith Willard. Or if you want to listen to our podcast, any of the major podcast things, just put in your Google search Behind the Veil by Keith Willard, and it'll pop it up.
Excellent. And for all the listeners and the audience, Keith's resources will be in the links and show notes. So Keith, thanks so much. I really got so much out of this conversation, and hopefully the audience did too.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. Thank you. It was awesome.
I'm excited that you made it for another episode. You are truly the best. If you've been following the show for a while, you know that my passion is to bring you the education you need to find your path to financial freedom. Please come back week after week for new content, new resources, and great guests. Until then, if you haven't already, please be sure to check out the website, www.drchrislumdphd.com for more support. I'll see you next week.